the story about Jung, it's all part of the dream. You know, actually that's my point about all of this, is that the whole thing is all part of the dream. If it can't be recorded, maybe there's something to be in the now with, you know, which is actually really great for me to remember. So this woman had her dream, and she was being gifted this scarab beetle, and Jung had been hearing this tapping at the window while the woman was giving her dream. And this was in Switzerland in winter, you know, and of course the window was closed, and so he finally got up. You know, everything is significant in Jung's lexicon. So he goes over and he opens the window, and lo and behold, in flies a scarab beetle. And it's a gold-green color, and he catches it, and he hands it to the woman who's having this dream, and says, "Here's your scarab." And she just loses it, you know. She prior to that moment, she had been highly intellectual and very like, well, I'm doing this, but I'm not really believing in it. And after that moment, it completely let her penetrate into all the depths of what she'd been holding. She just let go of all resistance. This is very good counsel. You know, this is all, for all of us that are, you know, a little bit too much in our heads, and, you know, maybe we need to be able to drop into what is the rest of the story that I'm holding? What is the dream that I'm winding around? This is very good counsel. I really do think that one of the things the crop circles is doing is that it's giving us counsel. So what is the dream that we hold that can help us get to the root of our problems and make real progress? Is this crop circle counseling us to go past the intellect and face our emotional depths? Can we bring the light of the sun to the rotting waste we hold, letting it reform us into a new generation? Okay. So maybe you can already hear that in this talk what I'm doing is I'm providing the dream that's coming through me, you know. Please, I want you to make sure that you honor your own dream. What I'm doing, this is what is coming through me, and I'm sharing it because I'm finding a lot of real wonder and value in it. And but it is not the only way to look at it. It is not the right way to look at it. This is a way to look at it. And because of my own training, you know, where I've been looking at these things for many, many years and really wondering about them, and I love like just collecting all the information about everything that's happening around the whole phenomenon, all of it, as much as I can get. And then I've also had long-term research into esoteric studies and, you know, esoteric numbers, math, science, sacred geometry, things like that. And also just a really long-term personal spiritual investigation. So that's the lens that this story that I'm telling is coming through here. And hopefully you'll enjoy it. So, but please honor, you know, I mean, everybody has their own lens, and honor what comes through for you. So, Einstein, it's always good to invoke Einstein, right? So we all know this quote, you know, he said, the most important question a person can ask is, do you know it? What is it?
Is the universe friendly?
Yes, is the universe a friendly place, you know? So can the crop circles help us answer that? How do we stay present in the face of controversy and disinformation and disappointment and paradox? You know, this light that we're standing under, it's very intense and it's casting a very dark shadow. The fact that that disk can be both a sun disk and a dung ball, you know, shows how easily that the sacred symbols can be usurped and manipulated, and this has been happening throughout our culture. You know, what should be sacred and valid has been taken over by the fearmongers, you know, for mind control and population control and the fearmongers' agenda. And And on the other hand, you know, the fact that this is both the sun and a dung ball could be that it's counsel about fearlessness. It may actually be giving us a different, you know, even to take the story of the fearmonger's agenda, that rot, and hold that up into the light, and let us see what regenerative story wants to come out of that. That'd be really good. So I saw this fun little reframe, you know, at one moment as my mind tends to do, it like pulls all kinds of ridiculousness out of the air. And I saw that the word dung can be transformed by taking you, my projections on you, and turning them towards me, towards I, and dung becomes
ding.
Ding! Dung becomes ding! And there's something about ringing bells that has been really, really important to me lately, so I like that. So it's important to let the multifaceted dream surface into consciousness. Dream imagery allows the unconscious to speak and the hidden to reveal itself. In dreams, all the dimensions are intermingling. The dream, this dream that we're doing, it's fractal. I'm going to go into that. It's very precise, you know, so listen to what comes up for you. And it's non-arbitrary. What's happening actually is important. So I'll be showing in this presentation how the crop circles are helping us see duality in reality and find counsel to let it bring us back to presence for our own transformation. So it is my thesis, maybe I'll write a book, that the narrative surrounding the whole crop circle phenomenon, the whole thing, is depiction, counsel, and activation that can be resourced for our evolution at this time. Ding! And I really mean the whole narrative. I want to address a piece of this crop circle phenomenon right at the beginning, and that is the reality of hoaxing, because it does exist. Hoaxing is a part of this dream. Hoaxing in the sense of that there are crop circles that are man-made. We know this for a fact, and there's history around that, research that's done on that, and there are very interesting people that are involved in it, and so it's part of this dream. So the question, you know, what happens to your consciousness when you are confronted with the thought, man-made? You know, what happens there? This is a really good question. It's like, do you automatically just go, oh well, dismiss this, you know, do we take the word man-made and completely, you know, erase all the magic? This is really good to question. So how do we come to terms with that, with the fact that there are man-made ones? And we don't even know. I mean, some people, among the hoaxers, they say they're all man-made. There are some people that say that they are all man-made. And I don't believe that. I certainly don't believe that. But how do we come to terms with this? So what we can be certain of, what we can absolutely certain of, is that the numinous is involved, even with the hoaxing. So there are lots and lots of stories, and actually I have my own that I can testify with, that in the fields, and you know, each of you can probably access something in your own field, in your own memory, where you have touched that there is something way beyond that is active here, and that's unexplainable, and you don't know how that happened. And it's so easy, that it's so interesting how we can forget. I mean, even with my own one that was like, you know, knocked me for a loop, you know, it was like so undeniable. And yet I still can go into this place where, you know, sometimes I just forget, you know, and start to get doubtful. So, but even with the hoaxers, there's so many stories of them being out in the fields and, you know, seeing strange shadows, or being confronted with balls of light, or having time anomalies, you know, where they suddenly look up and it's several hours later. There's a story of one group that went in and they all synchronized their watches, and when they came out it was 15 minutes earlier. than when they'd gone in. You know, it's, I mean, you know, what do you do with these stories? You know, the numinous is involved. You engage with something like this, especially in that English landscape, which is, has so much going on in it, and you will be confronted with something other. So honor humanity's place in this. Honor it. That's a big deal. If it is, you know, if some of these are hoaxed, whoa, wow, you know, pretty amazing that this imagery is coming through and is being so powerful and is doing so much. So, part of the awakening is seeing how we've subjugated ourselves and given away our power, you know, personally, collectively, fractally. Okay, let's go on to another slide. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. If I can get it to move, there we go. Haha, this is a very old one.
Yeah.
1991, this was a seminal crop circle at Barbary Castle. And I've put here, this is a alchemical figure, alchemical painting from a book. Can't remember the name of the book, I should have written that down. So the dream, this dream that we are subject to, it's alchemical. And I want to talk a little bit about alchemy, because the crop circles speak in alchemical language. It's an alchemical language that deliberately, it encodes instruction. It employs symbolism and metaphor and association, parallels, paradox, and it has visual, verbal, and nonverbal, obviously, multiple depths of meaning that catalyze transformation. So in alchemy, you know, alchemy precipitates knowledge or substance from one dimension into another, right? So that's the hope in the alchemical work, is to be able to actually get knowledge or even substance to precipitate into this dimension. Or from one paradigm to another. All the different ways we find knowledge and meaning are paradigms or dimensions. All those different ways, they're paradigms, or they're actually dimensions. And they have vortices of intersections where one can make a shift. So one can learn sequentially and linearly. We've all done that for a very, very long time. But some points have many vortices that are coming together. And when you have those vortices come together, it enables deep knowledge to drop through. So this crop circle alchemy invokes meaning and energy and activation through all these alchemical devices like poetry and puzzle and multiple layers and implication and myth and magic and association and even physics and geometry and number and the unknown, you know, something about the unknown. All right, this was that date that we all just went through. This was the 2012 12/21 date. It's a solar system. You know, you have here a solar array here. This is the sun in the center. You've got orbits around it, planets on each of the orbits, and it's very clear. Even the third rock from the sun is Earth, and it has an extra little ring around it for the moon. And when they figured out what this date, when the planets would be in this particular array, it was the December 21st, 2012 date. You know, and it's so interesting. Here's Earth. You know, you had Sun, obviously, Mercury, Venus, and Mars was over here. Right through that, you know, it's almost like we're lining up with, this is Avebury over here. Like Avebury is representing galactic center. I like this. Wow. And there were several other, beyond Avebury, 1 or 2 or 3 other crop circles that actually were referencing a galaxy. And, you know, very interesting. I don't have those in this talk, but, you know, they're all lining up to be seen. So we have this mystical date in this mystical landscape, and that date has now come and gone. How are you doing? You know, I heard a little bit of the check-in, a little bit of disappointment maybe, or You know, just what's going on? You know, have you noticed being confronted by anything? You know, does the passing of this date as non-eventful, does that disappoint you? You know, it's like, it's something to consider. I mean, or conversely, have you noticed a shift? Have you noticed a shift in your own consciousness? You know, have you noticed any increase in synchronicity, for instance? You know, I can really testify to that one. That's amazing. Have you been confronted by any old patterns that aren't working anymore? Personally, collectively, are we being confronted by the collective patterns that aren't working anymore? With more contrast? I think that's definitely happening. Were you watching and open to the light of the galaxy to flood your consciousness? You know, and what happened with that? And now what happens? You know, if you actually did get something on that date, if you actually did feel, I know a lot of people that felt unbelievable amount of energy, and you know, again, I have my own testimonial there, but now it's passed, now that date is gone, and you know, what's happening with that? You know, all this is all really important to be aware of. Do you feel silly or heartened? So certainly on that date, huge numbers of people focus their intentions for a shift in consciousness, and we know that focus is powerful. Beyond what may have actually been available in that cosmic arrangement of Earth, Sun, galactic center, and then on the other side, Orion, what else was out there? Jupiter, Pleiades, you know, all of those other ones that we tend to, I found out, our galaxy is fractal, duh, who knew? We have this little minor galaxy going on out here where our sun is orbiting around Orion, and the Pleiades, Taurus, Sirius, there's another one that starts with an A, can't remember at the moment, that is all out here, that we're winding around here, and all of that is winding around the galaxy. And that direction is actually called anti-galactic center. Who knew? So, so interesting, because it seems like what was happening for this refocus was getting us to look away from all of the warring, silly, kind of myopic consciousness that's kept us out here focused away from actually that we have this huge galaxy that could be feeding us. And in the workshop, again, in the workshop there's going to be a lot more, I'll go more into what that story is, because it's really interesting. The mythology there that happened in the night sky is really, really, it's a good story. So we'll go deeper into that then. So, this crop circle shifted after a few days. They came down and did a little bit more on it. So that 2012 date, that iconic 2012 date, really has galvanized our attention. And what happened, you know? Even though the big date's passed, the effect, the galactic effect, is continuing to impress upon us. It is still active. And so pay attention to what's going on. So there's one researcher who talks about, and actually the Mayans talked about this too, that the new era that we're now in, we're in the new Baktun, the 13 Baktun, is going to be dominated by space, by our relationship with space and space weather. And in fact, the sun, you know, this part of what's happened here in this crop circle, when they came back, they expanded the sun. The sun is now over the orbits of Mercury and Venus, you know, Mercury the head, Venus the heart, and that expansion of light from our own personal center of our solar system is helping us to see with much more depth what are we thinking and what are we feeling, basically. And really important. And that with this refocus towards galactic center, beyond galactic center, there are these things in the galaxy called magnetars, and one of them rang. They're these very, very fast, very powerful, not dead stars. When they call them dead, but they're clearly not dead. And one of them put out a pulse in 2004, and it immediately spread throughout the galaxy, even though it was beyond galactic center, over it was 50,000 light years away. But this thing rang through the galaxy, and the galaxy vibrated. It actually vibrated with a note, and that note was F sharp. Woo! Do you believe that? Unbelievable. So we are being rung, and part of what's happening with the sun and the Earth, actually with the Earth, with all of this galactic space weather, is that the Earth is dropping her magnetic shield. The magnetosphere, great word, is actually, she's going, ugh, and she's just drinking it in. It's like her crown chakra is opened up. The vortex that's on her North Pole has actually gotten wider, and so that the energy really just goes right into her earthy heart, and this is just all really amazing. So, how do we, when the magnetic field drops, also that really messes with our consciousness. When the astronauts went out into space and they weren't under the influence of the magnetic field, after a few days they came back and their minds were scrambled. There was one astronaut that they had to go out and get him home because he just couldn't function anymore. He was out, it was really dangerous, and they went and got him back after he'd been out there for 2 weeks, and he actually had lost his memory permanently. So we got a big blank slate here that got laid down next to this. Is part of what's happening that the magnetosphere is wobbling, and we're needing to really rewire what's going on here. Dropping the shields, letting the information in. And it's a big unknown. A lot of people here watching, though, if those are people. Okay, and then we have had this reference of the magnetic field or the being rung like a bell. So these were in the same year. No, these were in following years, subsequent years, but the same field. So, and it seemed to have been getting closer. When the bells are rung, when the vibration is coming through, stuff gets loosened up, and things can get realigned. This is one of my very, very favorite crop circles. I love this one. This was at a place called Uffington Castle, where the Uffington horse is that's carved into the landscape, the ancient Neolithic Uffington horse, dragon, something on the hill. So this talk is about the Great Awakening, and I really like starting with this one, or having it close to the beginning, because for me this means notice your projections. One of the things I like to do when I first see a crop circle is that I actually will describe what I see just really plainly out loud, so because it actually starts to help me get meaning out of it. So here we have a ring, and there's a circle, a dot, that's inside the ring, and it's off center. And it's got these lines that are coming out of it, and then up above it, or on its center axis, centered with that, all these projective lines, is a reflector that's the same image, really, as the dot, that is got concentric circles coming back, radiating out of it. So, and the interference pattern that happens because of these projected rays and the concentric circles creates this very complex pattern that you see here. Okay? So to me what this is saying, if I were to take that, okay, well, if there's a message here, the message is, for me, notice that you are projecting, and what you're projecting is actually a reflection of yourself in some way. And it may look very complex and not like yourself. And it's very easy to start going out into one's projection and, every time you come to an intersection point, you can choose something different and get pretty lost, you know, make a very, very complex story, for instance, out of what your projection is. But however, at any moment, you know, if you get lost, you can just follow a straight line and it will take you right back to center from anywhere in here. It'll just go zoom. It's almost like, you know, if you start to look at this in 3D, you know, I have this feeling like this is a gravity well. You can just drop right into gravity and come right back to center. So notice your projections. Notice if your projection you hold feels contracted or expansive. You know, back to that Einstein quote. Einstein didn't say, "Is the universe a friendly place or not?" That was not the quote. He said, "Is the universe a friendly place?" He didn't say, "Is the universe a hostile place?" He didn't say that that was the most important question. Is the universe a hostile place? No. He said, "Is the universe a friendly place?" So that question of how is it that we are approaching our projections, you know, are we looking at them from the point of view, is this a hostile place? Or are we looking at it from the point of view, is this a friendly place? And that a priori come from is significant about what it is that you're going to be able to get out of it. So this is also an old one from 1991, same year as the Barbary Castle triangle with the three. Not too far from there. Okay, so this was the design of the original crop circle. This avenue with circles along it and a key and some extra, they call these grape shot. Anyway, so this fellow, John Martineau, who publishes the little wooden books, beautiful, I recommend them, especially if you're into sacred geometry. He did some research about this particular crop circle, and he took just the circle, the part with the circles in the avenue, and he started putting rulers on it and finding the tangents, and you know, there were two ways that he looked at it. One was with projected tangents and the other was repeating radii. So in this first one, you know, he took from the center of this little dot at the end of this alleyway and he drew a line that tangented, apparently, you know, it tangented this one, and this white one from both sides. And then he took another spot, he found another spot which was at the edge of this circle, projecting out that way, and that this circle and this circle were tangented from that point of view, right there. And so what I know from this research is that if you had been standing in the field, in the middle of this little crop circle right there, and looking down that alleyway, this little tiny tuft of grass, the white part is the standing parts. The black has been laid down. So this little tuft of grass would have eclipsed this circle and this circle. You would not have been able to see them. That's you know, that is just counsel. That's just sheer counsel. Where you stand, how you project, what you're looking at, you know, a little something, you know, a little grain of sand in your eye, you know, a little something could totally make your view of the universe be limited. And in fact, that's what we've been under for millennia, is that our point of view has been really limited by, you know, by obstacles in our way. Projection is everything. And to know that there are likely many more ways of looking at something, or looking at anything, you know, that brings a lot of humility and excitement, and also, you know, creative spark and intuition, and perhaps even leaps of consciousness. So let me show you one other thing that he did with this crop circle, because this is amazing. He then took just the circles, and he found that they could all fit together in this little figure. You know, some of them are repeated, you know, like this circle's been repeated twice, this little circle's been repeated, you know, but they all fit together. Every single one of these circles fits together into this little gem. And it's like looking through a kaleidoscope. It's like, I never would have come up with this. This is like so out of the box for me to consider that you know, from this original crop circle to get to this, you know, that's a real leap of vision. And that's like an alchemical distillation of something. You know, he stood far enough away. He got enough perspective and enough imagination that, you know, this kind of gem crystallized out of that crop circle. You know, could that be possible for us with every moment?
Wow.
This one took place in Solano County, not too far away, in 2004. And this particular arrangement of the elements, you know, the large circle with the two on the outside, and I love how it's climbing out of this these electrical power grid communication towers, whatever they are. It's like boom, and then it just takes a left-hand turn and does this amazing, amazing figure. And this particular geometry is one that it's the triptych geometry, you know, with the large center. The two circles on either side fit. Their diameters are the radius of the center circle. So, and I've got some more about this in a moment. So, we're now going into a little bit more detail. That triptych geometry, it's something that you see in a lot of sacred sites. And for instance, all over the world, Mexico, Egypt, Bali, Rome, Thailand, you know, this is really, really typical in a lot of churches. And so what is it? It obviously has meaning, you know, with the duality, it means it obviously has something to do with opposites, you know, union of opposites, being able to hold the paradox. And that the larger in the center, the larger hole, the portal in the center, allows you to take them both in. So, this one, I think this one is actually really, really key. This was in Chilbolton in the year 2000. It was, you know, you can see that it's got this same kind of geometry referenced in it, right? And these circumferences are, these diameters are the length of the radius. So I want to tell you a little bit more about this, but I'm not going to go into huge detail about this significance. That's that crop circle. This was the following year in the exact same location. It's important to know. The exact same location where it first came down was the following year. This crop circle came down, which is the reply to the Arecibo message that was sent out in 1974 by Carl Sagan and a team. And they sent out this message into the stars, you know, in bitmapped binary computer code, and with information about our numbers and atomic elements, table of elements, nucleotides, you know, the little schematic of what we look like. The thing is that, and then it came back. The following year it came back, and these were slightly, look at that. That's a little different schematic. That's interesting. I don't know if you can see that from where you're sitting. Looks like a little alien. Big head, little body. He's more like a big man. But the point here is these two pieces. This was the bottom of the return. This was supposed to be a schematic of the Arecibo telescope. What is it? Radio telescope that actually sent the message out originally. And it's monodirectional. It's it's only going out. Very interesting. Coming back, we have this figure, and let's look at that figure. They're telling us this is how we sent the message out. This is they're telling us this is how we sent our message back. So let's look at how they are communicating, because that device is really primary. They're communicating through understanding that duality emerges from the whole, and that it's fractal. Those dualities split, split, split fractally. So this is really interesting. Did you know that if you have a circle, if you have two circles that whose diameter equals the radius of a larger circle, if you take the circumference of this circle and the circumference of this circle, you add those together, the sum equals the circumference of this circle. You can keep going. You know, if you then, these circles, had they been complete, they would have also been the radius of these. The diameter of this would have been the radius of this. You following that? Mm-hmm. So here we have 4 of them. You add the circumferences of these 4 circles together, it equals the whole. You add the circumferences of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16 little circles together, it equals the whole. It's like a hologram. You know the idea of a hologram where, you know, you have a 3D, it's a technology to make a photograph that looks 3D, and the thing that everybody talks about is that if you take a little piece off the hologram and you look at it, it's a picture of the whole thing. You know, and it doesn't matter how small a piece, it's still a picture of the whole thing. What most people do not ever tell you, but this is spiritual counsel, if you ask me, is that that little piece is blurry. And it's also limited numbers of perspectives. Like if you take it from the top right-hand corner, you get perspective of looking at the whole from that top right, from that angle. You actually, in order to have a clear picture, you need to have all the little pieces together. That's going to give you the most clarity. We need, you know, if this reality is holographic, each one of us is like a little piece off the hologram, and we're looking at the reality through a perspective that's limited and a little blurry. I'll testify to that one. So we need each other. We need to have the assemblage of all of our consciousnesses together to really be able to get this whole fractal communicative reality device. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens when you start to have your consciousness communicate fractally, huh? Huh? Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe you can start to see through dimensions. This particular one, this was in 2011. It was near the very end of the season in 2011, which is just 2 years ago. Is a 5D, this center geometry here, it's a decagonal, which means it has 10 points, deca, 10, and it's actually a 2-dimensional projection of a 5th-dimensional geometry called a pentaract. Okay, so you know they seem to be pointing us towards some very advanced state of consciousness, and you know, 5D consciousness, it's a bit more slippery in time and space, and it's able to see multiple realities simultaneously. Like, you know, if you're standing in the center there, it's like that dot where all those projections were coming out of. You know, if this is the center where all the projections are going in, look at how many different angles, and I mean, you know, you start to look at this as even just 3D, you know, a 3D interesting geometry. It's a little hard to wrap one's consciousness around, but it really starts to pulsate, you know, do interesting things. So the other thing is that this came down at a place, you know, here's the alchemical, part of the alchemical thing is that they use words, they actually use words sometimes, and the place names are important, you know. So this came down at a place called Jubilee Plantation. And the Jubilee year, you know, it just so happens, I think this was the 50th anniversary for the Queen, too, you know, that it was her Jubilee that came down, and that's, you know, one of those expressions of the usurpation of what should be something holy and sacred, and it's about the Queen being able to say, been in power for all these years, you know. So, but no, let's replace the holiness to it. So the Jubilee year, the Jubilee year was supposed to be the 50th year, you know, the year after we've gone through 7 cycles of 7 years, 49 years. The 50th year is supposed to be a year where those that have had the power release all debt. All debt is supposed to be forgiven. And all those who have been indentured servants are supposed to be returned to their families and to their clan. This sounds really good, doesn't it? I mean, the fact that this comes down in a crop circle at Jubilee, 5D consciousness, Jubilee, let's forgive debt, let's let our consciousness really give ourselves back to where is it that we are really from? Yeah, which is a really lovely question. So, how many here people feel like you're a star being already? So, wait a minute, so this was in Cheryl, and if you had just gone around the corner, across a field, through a little valley, you would have come to this crop circle. So, this guy's got 5D consciousness, doesn't it? You know, remember, you know, don't worry about hoaxing, it's all part of the dream. And actually, I don't think this was hoaxed. I think it's got some amazing stuff going on. It had all kinds of interesting geometry. The Great Pyramid was just, geometries are really ringing throughout all of this. And I didn't put that slide in there, but let's just take a look at this, etc. It seems like they do want us to activate that 5D consciousness. So how do we do that? You know, well, yeah, you know, it's all about consciousness, and that has something to do with waking up something in there. How are we going to do that? Well, you know, this might be a good idea. You know, we do know that there are medicines out there and substances that can be smoked or taken in some way that actually do give you visions, you know, of something coming, something resonating out in a new way. However, there's another way of looking at this. You know, one ordinarily starts to look at it as a pipe. But, he has nostrils, you know. Why does this guy need nostrils if he's sucking in air on the pipe? Maybe he's sucking in air through his nose so that he can blow on the pipe. Perhaps this is not a pipe to smoke, perhaps this is a pipe to sound, like a shofar. Any of you Jewish, you know, the shofar that gets blown on New Year's Day every year at Rosh Hashanah. And then it also gets blown, surprise, surprise, at Jubilee. On the 50th year, the shofar is supposed to be sounded in order for us to all know that it's time to do Jubilee, forgive debt, let all indentured servants go back to their slaves, i.e. slaves, go back to their families. So, I don't know if you've been hearing about the strange sounds that have been happening around the world. Seems like that pipe is definitely being blown, along with our minds. Okay. So what is it that's waking up? You know, this, I don't know if you can see in this last one, but he's got like a real swirl around his third eye here. And actually also over this, there's a swirl in the lay of the crop. So what's inside there? What do you know that's getting activated? And
Pineal.
it's the pineal gland, yes! So it's like looking into a kaleidoscope, all right? So, I mean, that's that kind of, you know, cosmic thing. When you look in a kaleidoscope, a little bitty small adjustment, everything clicks together differently. So, for instance, okay, this one also references the torus field, which we heard a lot about in the Thrive movie, and, you know, it's a lot about free energy devices, and it's the torus field is this spinning field that's surrounding all of us. It's surrounding each person. There's a field around the planet. It's this donut-shaped field that's spinning. And so you can see it referenced here. And then this eye in the center, though, you know, it's receiving a different direction of this field that's creating an interference pattern that is being revealed on the inside. It's not being revealed on the outside. You have to get your eye, that pineal, to wake up. So how else might we get ourselves to awaken? Here's another one that talks about that. We've got the torus field going in one direction. And then, you know, this is really interesting. You have this little gap here where, you know, it's like you just make a little tiny adjustment. You only need to just see how you're doing duality maybe in the opposite way. You just kind of flip things. This was dark and then it suddenly became light. And suddenly you can see the whole thing moving in the opposite direction. And not only that, you can even start to see how within the way that we've polarized everything, each one of those polarized rays that we've come up with, it's also polarized. It starts to get, the fractal nature of reality starts to reveal itself. This was right next to Silbury Hill. It was like pointing at Silbury Hill. Okay. So this one, this was, you know, if you have the ability, this is a stereogram. And if you have the ability to, like, you know, where you, with a stereogram where you cross your eyes or you look past the picture or across your eyes, and you get these, if you can get these two to line up while I'm talking to you about it, you know, that'd be a great little exercise to do, because it pops out. It becomes very, very, very 3D when you do that. So, you know, here we have, you know, what originally, it looks like in one direction you have this kind of very flat concentric circles, and then you just turn, and, you know, you turn 90 degrees, and then also you turn internally something. You turn your eyes in a certain way, and dimensions start to really pop out at you. And the other thing that's really interesting about that, when you can get them to line up, is that you see it create what happens, and that you get a third one to appear, and the third one appears within the vesica piscis. The vesica piscis is when two circles overlap and that are the same size, and their circumferences touch the centers of each other. You get this fish shape. Pisces, fish. Vesica, vessel. And in sacred geometry, with that overlap, with that reflection of self, of one circle to another, overlapping, seeing each other's centers, all creations emerge out of that. All geometry, if you study sacred geometry, that's where you start. All geometry emerges out of that. This was early in the year. This was in early June, June 9th. And it was the first one that came in this past year that really had some, like, real mysterious gorgeousness coming on in through it. And there was a whole series of them this past year that seemed like they were kind of from this family. And you know, they have this eye figure, right? And it's, I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but there's our rays coming out of the eyes, and actually all these beings is, you know, we've got this sideways, but that eye is vertical. It's pointing up for each one of them. And I'll show you a little bit more about it, but with some other figures that are coming up. But they're coming in threes, and they have, each of them in this one, they all each have like a little veil around them when they're first coming in, or it's almost like they were, you know, if they're space beings or something, they're in there. They each have a little bubble of protection or air or something, I don't know, swimming into our reality. Oh, you know, I recently had the thought that, you know, the alien head, that head, the smoking alien, that's the classic idea that we have about aliens, that they're humanoid and that they have eyes, and, you know, that's the icon, even if they're, you know, reptilian or whatever, alien, this is the icon that we would use, was that smoking alien head thing. But what if they actually look like this? What if they are light beings? What if they are just beings of consciousness, of perception, that are coming in? This, you know, and there are lots of balls of light and, you know, or geometries of light that get picked up on cameras that are very, very different, that do seem to be beings. And they're, you know, maybe they're actually seeing something and projecting light, and that feels more, I would love to meet these guys. Okay, so this was the second one that came down this past year in this family. And on this one, the veil is gone. The veils are gone. It's completely here now. It's like whatever that was, it popped. And that was laid down so beautifully. This was actually on the crest of a hill. This was at the bottom of the hill. It was like it was climbing up the hill.
Wow.
Oh, it's just so beautiful. And then the other thing to notice is that on here, actually here I'll show it in the next one, is this diamond pattern. That's the same one,
Wow.
close up. In here is this diamond pattern.
Wow.
On each of those dots that is its body, and it's like it's fluid, it's swimmy, it's not stiff. It's very, very able to navigate up and over the hills, you know. That diamond geometry is the diamond is it's also the octahedron in 3D. You know, the octahedron is the form that is the pyramid with 4 sides on top of a upside down pyramid with 4 sides. You know, that's the octahedron, and that's that diamond shape. And that diamond geometry is the best receiver and transmitter of energy and information. You can find, they use, it's actually in diamonds, and they use diamonds in communication devices. Back to communication, being able to receive information and also transmit information. And this one's completely integrated with that diamond geometry. Okay, so just go back for a second. You'll see. So we have this. This is that same. This icon, this alien head shape. It's also part of the eye. You know, the Vesica Piscis. But we have this icon that is this alien head shape that's composed of a 2 circles overlapping. When you get 2 circles overlapping, it leaves a crescent behind. That's what happens with the eclipses. You know, when the moon goes in front of the sun, it leaves a little crescent, or our shadow goes in front of the moon, it leaves a little crescent of light. So that's how I read whenever I see those crescents in the circle. So this was from 2005. And you see here, we've got this same icon going way back then. And I don't think that we all read it that way back then, but now I certainly do. I think this is that same alien head shape, or humanoid shape. Our heads are also that, you know. And here you've got the alignment. Seems to be referencing this alignment that we just went past. And you have these rays still coming out the top of the head. And, you know, you had this Aztec or Mayan shield, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful aligning pattern around it. And even like the light being able to really reference our vertical and horizontal nature, which is really good for being able to stay in balance. Being able to drop into your center again. This is all referencing a great orientation. That was 2005. This was 2011. So the year before the really awakened beings started swimming in towards us. But here we have that same shape. Looks familiar, yes. And the rays or the feathers coming out the head. And we have, this is a 10-sided geometry, which the decagon, like the pentaract, you know, it's that same kind of 5-dimensional, 5D geometry, surrounded by pyramids all around the world. Seems like it may have had something to do with what now is available through having had this alignment come towards us. And then And then this was from this last year. This was the last one of the family of crop circles that had this kind of theme. So here you see the same thing, and just look. Let's look back and forth. So here you have the crescents are on the bottom, and the top of the head is open, and the rays are coming out. Whereas this one from the past, prior, the alignment was at the top of the head is closed. That alignment of beings is still closed. There's something still not quite completely opened up yet, in my opinion. So, but now, all of those new ones that I was showing you, they all have the crescent is now internal, and that the top of the heads are open on all of them, and the rays are all able to be received and transmitted out the top. This guy, you've got the horizontal and the vertical, or the vertical and the horizontal alignment going on, and this alignment thing is fractal here. You've got a great big alignment with this big crescent, then you've got the personal one, and then you've got one over the pineal, and I think it actually is even going on in the lay of the crop in the center there. So this fractal, to me, like the 2012 alignment was fractal like that. It was like, you had galaxy, then this little baby galaxy, which included Orion and all of that, and then our sun, and then Earth, and then us, and then, whatever the beings are that are going on in there. It's like, it's this fractal alignment that came down. So, this is really interesting. I just happened to come up just recently. This is recent research. Look at the similarity between this and this. Go back and forth a couple times. This is actually a mural, but what this is representing is the work of this fellow, professor and his team, Shankar Balasubramanian. Everyone, let's say Balasubramanian. Let's say it again. Balasubramanian. It's so much fun to say. So Professor Balasubramanian has discovered with some other researchers a 4-stranded quadruple helix DNA in humans. 4-stranded quadruple helix DNA. And that this quadruple helix DNA structure, known as G quadruplexes, quite also a fun word to say, they exist in the human genome, and they form in regions of DNA that are rich in the building block guanine. There's A, C, T, and G. G is guanine in DNA. Act G. I think that's really interesting. It's all part of the dream. So a quote from Professor Balasubramanian is, we're seeing links between trapping the quadruplexes with molecules and the ability to stop cells dividing, which is hugely exciting. In other words, stop their manic polarization. Actually, this has to do with cancer, which, these cells are dividing without any limits on them. And so being able to have this orientation, they just, so beautiful. Let's say that this kind of alignment with 4, never mind. I'll just let your consciousness play with that. It looks very similar, doesn't it? This was also from this past year. This was the 3rd stage in a 3-stage crop circle that came down. And I'm going to show you the first stage, but this was the last piece. There was this, actually it was the lines that was the last piece in this diamond. The second piece was this circle and everything inside of it. And again, boy, does that look like galactic alignment? Or what? You have this huge one beyond something, or maybe this is the magnetar that was ringing, and here's the galactic center, and here's the sun and earth and everything else lining up and receiving this huge new alignment. And it's affecting stage 1. This was the first stage. associatively, you know, maybe it's Disney's palace for princesses. But there also seems to be something, you know, wet and drippy coming off of it. But actually, you know, the one that really, really speaks to me about that, the association, is, of course, the church. And how much blood, sweat, and tears has been squeezed out of the church these days, and how much awakening needs to happen in what we have called our spiritual resource. We need to really refocus all of that into some other much larger reference point, you know. Stop playing in the rumpus room, as I used to hear somebody talk about it. Okay, so what was happening in that rumpus room? How did those churches get built? So this is not a crop circle, but I think it applies because you know, we're talking about consciousness, and we're talking about the usurpation of the sacred. And actually, you know, I don't really quite want to go there, because I do feel like it has been our path as consciousness in this realm to understand how to deal. How do we create in this realm? What is it that we do in order to, we've been meant to try and control these elements. And part of that understanding is having been understanding geometry and how to work with the straight edge and the 90-degree angle, the carpenter's square, the square, which gives you horizontal and vertical, you know, and the compass, which is the circle maker, and also gives you perspective off the flat plane, you know. And you have to know where your center is in order to get a good circle, you know. So I like this one because, you know, that one has that eye in its joint there. And the G, interesting, you know, the G is it's a spiral. And, you know, if you want to say that it stands for God, you can do that. It could also stand for gratitude or guanine. We can have it stand for guanine now. I like that. And the other one that I'm actually really liking is that it's gravity. You know, that you have to know, if you can allow the force of gravity, which is just reliable. It's there. It's not something that we have to control. It's the unknown that is absolutely on our side. And you can just drop into gravity and allow the circle, the center of the circle, to be found so that it can be drawn appropriately. And then your vertical is going to be straight, and you're going to build appropriately. So, you know, these are things, these tools we were meant to be working with them. You know, this is what built those churches. This is what built Chartres Cathedral and these amazing spaces that can resonate for us. So, but, you know, it's gotten out of hand. The controlling mechanism of it has gotten a bit out of hand. And if you have only one eye that's horizontal, you lose perspective. You do not have perspective anymore. So, you know, let's take a look. So this was a crop circle. This is the only one I found that I thought really represented the Masons, the Masonics. And that I know of. That really seems to be about it. You know, the eye on top of the pyramid, that's typical Masonic symbology. There are 11 rays on each side, so you have 33 degrees, you could say. You know, that's the Masonic ascent to power, is 33 degrees. And then the other thing, I think it's a magnificent crop circle. I love it. This eye, if you look at it, it's built on a grid. This area was segmented into a triangular grid, you know, ding, 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 and then they filled it in. It's bitmapped. This eye is bitmapped, and that's why, you know, it looks so angular and strange. So this is something that got constructed instead of, you know, really going from the center and finding a way for it to be smooth and easy. Instead it got constructed, you know, which, you know, is magnificent, but, and, you know, on the outside, actually, you know, this is one of the things that makes me think that it's real, is that to have drawn this circle, you would have had to been standing in undamaged crop somewhere in there, like really far away from the tram lines. So, so on the outside of this Masonic effort, our effort to really build with the elements, we are being held in something sacred. It's good to know. So, but there are limits. There are limits to what we can do with our physical tools, and we're definitely coming up against that these days. So I put this one up again to show that vertical eye. Notice that, you know, this is very different from that one. Got a very different feel, yeah?
Yep.
Here's what's possible. That eye is vertical instead of horizontal. Very organic looking. And the diamond is just completely integrated into its field, into all of its body. Okay, so this was from 2008, and so the awakening eye, you know, the third eye awakening is something that's been referenced for a long time, right? So this one's lovely. This was also a two-part crop circle. It started off with these 3 center, you know, balloons or whatever they are. And this actually looks like the geometry of that you remember the gem that came out of that first one that I showed you, where John Martineau assembled all the pieces together and he found this thing going on? It kind of looks like that. It's got these overlapping circles that something else is emerging out of. And then on 22nd of July, which is 22/7, which is pi, always a good date. These 3 birds and these 3 birds, those other birds came out. So then we got this diamond geometry out of it. So, you know, these eyes look like they're closed. It looks like 3 beings to me. Their eyes are closed except their third eye is waking up, right?
Wow.
And it's got that same kind of, you know, feathery something's going on. And then these swallows, because we're waking up, then these birds can fly out. And they specifically are swallows. And swallows are highly symbolic, you know, and they have been for a very, very long time. Long ago, a sailor, you know, the sailors would go out to sea, and they would be very far away, and they'd see a swallow. You know, they would know that land's got to be somewhere not too far away. And so that feeling of complete freedom going out into the open sea, but yet there's this little sign of safety. It's very good. I like this. So, you know, so the sailors would get swallows tattoos when they had sailed a certain number of miles, and prisoners would get swallow tattoos when they'd been imprisoned for too long or for a very long time and finally had been set free, you know. The swallows represented our freedom from prison. Oh man, I like this. And they also lift you up to the heavens. And so that thing about freedom and safety, where we can think that we want to be free, but what is our consciousness really doing with how far we are going to let ourselves go? And if we can feel that we're actually being held, that the swallow, you know, that little bird flying out in the ocean, you know, that there's some kind of feeling that yes, you're safe. It's going to be okay. Everything is going to be all right. You know, and of course then there is that song that's called 3 Little Birds, you know, by Bob Marley. Don't you worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing, everybody, is gonna be alright. Yeah. So it just so happens this is another one with these swallows, and it's in this lovely fractal resonant geometry that's it actually is really a beautiful resonant fractal geometry. Just so happens that this came down 2003. Just a few days earlier, there had been a conference where Michael Glickman had been speaking, and at the end of his talk, he played that song. He'd been talking about the geometries of the crop circles and everything, and he played that song, that Bob Marley song, Every Little Thing Is Gonna Be Alright, and then a couple days later, this flew out, and this is another one of those ones that's actually flying uphill. It's, you know, just beautifully laid into the landscape, so. They were letting us know every little thing's going to be all right. So there were a bunch of them that had these swallows in them. This was another one. Okay, so this is a little bit foreshortened because of the angle of the camera, but you have the same, that's that alien head icon down there, and the eyes are even in the lay of the field, of the grass. And, you know, it's, he's got the matrix coming out of his head, or he's downloading it, or actually, oh my God, I'd never noticed that before. That diamond pattern is actually in the lay there. Mm-hmm. So he's both transmitting and receiving the information. Wow. And then you have up here, you have this alignment again. That's my alignment icon. That's how I read it. And the swallow, freedom and safety, balancing the scales, and unfathomable information, just kind of like falling out of whatever this is. So, so this was from 2004, and what I want to start to approach is, what is the technology of consciousness? Ooh. So in this photograph, we have the crop circle down here, and then on the hill is one of the horses that's carved into the hill. And so we have the horse and the bee, and looks kind of like a bee. Looks a lot like a bee. People called it the bee. And you know, the horse, mythologically, it represents our emotions, our sensitivity, our physical courage, our ability. It's this amazing animal. You know, a lot of people doing therapy with horses these days. I don't know if you've done any of that, but very interesting. They don't lie. It's very direct, very direct. And then the consciousness of the bee, you know, the bee produces food, it produces medicine. It's, God, you know, it's this magical creature. Preservative, salve, it does, you know, pollination of most things. It's so critical for us. And it's not supposed to be able to fly, but it does anyway. So it has this magical ability to fly. It's like, supposedly its wings are not aerodynamically sound for what it does, but I've heard a story that it actually has some kind of chamber in its throat that produces an anti-gravity field. Woohoo! We like this one, huh? Okay, so, you know, it's some kind of cosmic being that already has gone past us. So, this particular one, this is some research that was done on the geometries of this one, and it's this incredible fractal geometry that's actually very similar to it's resonant of the ones that was done the year before of the three little birds flying up the hill. So it's this was done by Alan Brown. This geometric, hard to see, I know, from a little far away, but he said, the basic patterns is built up from the starting point of a simple vesica piscis, which we talked about before, which itself describes geometrically the emergence of duality from the originating unity of creation. That's what the vesica piscis does. The full diagram depicts a harmonic cone of interpenetrating vesica piscis. The cone extends both infinitely out into space as well as contracting down into a point of singularity. The figure thus becomes a sort of holographic fractal-like thing where whatever starting point is taken, the same sevenfold structure emerges. So that's quoted from Alan Brown. So in the workshop, we're going to go a little bit deeper into what that's about. So, you know, the other symbols that we see here, you know, we've got the the crescent of the alignment of this very, very, very large alignment that this resonating, this consciousness is, I mean, you've got the head here, that head geometry that's, coming through 4 steps of dimension. And we've seen that level of 4 steps of dimensional shift going through a lot of them. It was in the smoking alien, it's in a lot of them. They're just 4 dimensions out, like seems to be some kind of completion. And then you have these beautiful wings that are coming up on either side of four fingers each, advancing toward this alignment. So this was, this was back in 2004. So in the field next to it, a little later in the season, was this one. And same year, next field, you have this head shape, again, we see that. And I think this was long before I really understood that was the icon that was going on. But so we have the same one, 2004, and you've got the crescent going on over the head. And this kind of has the feeling of like this, a crab or that ancient trilobite, that really, really ancient, some kind of very old, crusty sea creature. And you have the same wing configuration, right, going on, but here it's got an extension on it that look like claws, and the wing is folded down over the head, and it's kind of holding this ball of energy or whatever that's like it's only referenced on one side. And it's like it feels to me like it's like impacted. It had to take on this big ball of energy. So this particular one had transformation happen to it over the course of 3 more iterations. It had 4 transformations of it. This was the first one. So so what happened here? So we have something from the outside, a trinity coming on and impacting it, and you suddenly are able to have the balance of polarity going on with this energy ball. So that was step 1, and then this is both, that was step 2. This is 3 and 4. 3 was the rest of what happened here. The original was just these 3, and then it got an outline on it, and then it got an extra little tail going on. It's really a lot of energy, a lot of information that's coming from very, very far away. And then the last step was that these 2 things got added, and then also it got more defined, and then this all got cleaned up, so that the claws are really, really being very plainly seen. The energy ball has gotten integrated somehow, and it's like it's a whole different being at this point. It really looks like something very different. So, and this is just to show you, there's the horse, this is the bee from earlier in the summer, and this is July 31st, and they're both referencing the horse. So, that ability to like fly through dimensions with the vibrational something of the bee, or whatever this is representing, and being open to this alignment and being referenced to our physical emotional nature, as opposed, it's also showing us, how we've been held in, by being impacted without the support and whatever that is. It seems to be referencing that, but that the wings or the claws, it's got them both referenced here. I think that's really amazing. So this was the following year. No, this was in 2009. Again, okay, so we've got these same themes. I love doing these sequences, so where you can really see the kind of a progression going on. It's wing and claw, and you have 4 of them now, and then you've got this alignment, the head with the some awakening going on. This same theme going on. And here, those wings, 4 of them, there's some kind of feeling of we see ourselves in the center. There's some kind of orientation with the four directions, and there's some spin and movement going on. And this one actually had a little bit more happen to it later in the season, where it had like handles put on it or something. Very, very interesting. But so the claws, the four clawed, sticky somethings. To me, I went through a lot about in consciousness this past year, about looking at fear. And, it seems to be referencing getting past fear. And that there are four of them, this idea of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, that there are basically four categories of fear. And that's also something that we can look at in the workshop. So I'm not going to go into too much about that right now. But here it feels like that what has been grabbing us, our fears grabbing us, it's loosening up here in this particular one. This was in 2005, which was the following year after the bee and the crab. And this is actually the center of one that I'm going to show you the rest of it in the next slide. But, here you have a kind of a sun or a horse head surrounded by all this chaos, but also, really held very securely in this ring. And the horse head in Hindu astrology represents the sun, and this kind of does look like a blazing sun too in the center. So this is that figure that I just showed you in the center there, and it's being given its orientating field, and very, very lovingly protected. And look what's in the same field with it. Could it be? Could it be that we are supposed to awaken? Could it possibly be?
Diamond.
Yes, the diamond again, right? The diamond crystalline receiver and transmitter.
Is that the interference pattern?
It's both. It's interference pattern. It's actually, if you really want to go into the I've looked at this one for a long time. It's interesting. This vesica here doesn't extend all the way across. You've got two vesicas that are overlapping and then twisting their way around, actually creating these diamonds. And again, you get 4 levels of diamonds, so you have that number 4 again. And so there's definitely something there. Eat your fears. Okay, so to me this was a description of what happens how to eat your fears, what that is. So, you could read it from either direction, but right now I'm reading this. This really looks kind of like a digestive tract, either eating or pooping. I don't know which way, but here I'm going to take it that it's swallowed something. Here it like swallowed something, and he's gagging on it. it's like it's stuck in his craw here, but when it finally starts to get in, there's some kind of duality, and it's very static, and he's trying to digest it. It's just getting bigger, and 4 times, you go through 4 iterations of this, and suddenly it gets on the 5th one, a ring comes around it, and then it starts to resonate, it starts to really do something. And then it starts to really get digested. And when it finally gets to the center, it has this yin-yang in the lei. This beautiful yin-yang that's right in the center there. And then as it continues to finish getting digested, then you start to see that the whole thing is that pattern. It's all about balancing these dualities and letting them start to play and dance in us. Might be shifting our DNA structure, our emotional states. They've done experiments with DNA and emotion, where with fearful contracted emotion, they've actually seen the DNA knot up and get very complex. And when someone who can relax and feel love and feel circulation of their field, the DNA relaxes and it like pulses and dances in a different way. So to me that's like, it's talking about that. How can we promote the emotional states that are going to help us digest these rigid dualities? This is from that same family from this past year. Look at it, it's so beautiful. You know, and it's got this. This is from the church, you know, that we saw, those steeples on the church, and this is the exact same geometry that was at the top of the middle steeple. You know, that star that then got connected to by the galactic, all that other lovely stuff that came down. But this one's like, it's like folded back in on itself. There definitely is some counsel here, it seems to be self-referential, you know, turn back, see what it is that you're doing. Allow self-reflection. And this is the same one that I showed before, you know, with the diamonds integrated here. Slightly different view. So I'm quoting Susan Joy Renison here. She says that with this diamond geometry, she has a whole book called Tuning the Diamonds, which is about space weather and influences, and then also taking it, the importance of recognizing the importance of tuning your own diamond field in order to be able to work with all of these new cosmic energies that are being rained on us. And she says, once you build up your magnetic field, it is kept intact by the diamond energy field, which is the perfect receiver and transmitter of divine energies. You know, and of course on this one the veils are gone, the veils have all been dropped. The vertical and the horizontal are integrated and internalized so that dancing and navigation is possible. And that diamond shape is also the octahedron, so let's take a look at that. The octahedrons have been referenced in the crop circles. This was back in 2000. Think three-dimensionally, friends. Okay, so look. This is, if an octahedron, it's the four-sided pyramid on, you know, top and bottom.
Yeah.
This is the front side. If you imagine this is this face is towards you, and you see these two sides, but you don't see the back side, and you're only seeing the front side of the bottom, and the other three sides are hidden. You know, so you're seeing it. Is it popping three-dimensionally for you?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so this was referencing the octahedron. And this hexagon shape, the octahedron has a very close association geometrically with the hexagon, and also the hexagon with the cube. So this cube,
Wow.
and there have been lots and lots and lots of cubes that have come down in the crop circles over the years, but this is the one from this past year. Some people say it was man-made. And there are people who've claimed it. They've said that there's going to be a video that's going to go up in the winter, which I'm still waiting for, that shows that they filmed it being made. But I don't know. Possible. I'm really, you know, it's like things like that that really kind of make me go, whoa, this is quite the phenomenon if it is man-made. So, okay, so we're referencing the cube. And the cube is hexagonal, right? And then we have 6 little cubes, 6 by 6 each side. So we're referencing 6 by 6 by 6, and then you can look inside of each cube and you get another level fractally going down on the edges of each of these. It was in 2007, so just referencing the cube again, this hexagonal geometry. That this is just so radiant. Again, we have 4 levels that with 36 points and 18 sugar cubes. This is actually on Sugar Hill. They actually look like sugar cubes to me. And sugar, you know, what's sugar? Sugar is calorie. Sugar is energy. And this is just so. I mean, God, you eat one of these, you're just really going to have a lot of energy. You know.
It's also been the carrier of LSD and other.
Oh, right, that's right. That's right. Make it penetrate very quickly. So, this was the same year as this one. Just going to go back and forth a few times there so you can see that there's a reference here. this was, this was 36 points, 18 cubes, and the circular nature of it, the radiant nature of it is going out. When the radiant nature goes inwardly, then you find the collapse into geometry. Okay? So, and that radiant nature is inward here, and this is so amazing, this gorgeous one. Each of these little cubes, it's like they've been turned on point, so that you're seeing the corner, and but then also, there are all these cubes that they're kind of hidden. It's like you have to really, they're just overlapping each other everywhere, but you can see that this line, that line, they're these diamonds that create, the baby block cube. And it's all over there. So there's so many dimensions that are going on in this one. And actually this diamond pattern, what is in this diamond pattern, the diamond, is, so a few little elements that are kind of, they don't really mean anything by themselves, but that diamond is what is repeated over and over here to create this. It's kind of like what quilters do, to create this imagery that's going on, the flowers and the cubes on point and the hidden cubes and all of that. So there's so much that's kind of hidden to pop out here. Really wakes up your pineal to let that happen. 7 of August, and the other one, they were both 2007. So there was another cube that came down in 2007, and that was this one. This was on July 7th, 2007, or 777, a very auspicious date. So this came down before those other two. And this is it's referencing 6, got 6 rays on each side. This could be a reference. Carbon 12 has a cubic geometry, and past oxygen, carbon is it's the most abundant element in our bodies. So 777. There were 2 other crop circles that came down on this same date. This was one of them.
Wow.
So really, really clear yin yang. That's like no doubt about it. That's what this is representing. And there have been lots and lots. I have a whole file of crop circles that reference yin yang in very imaginative and creative ways that make you really expand how you look at that. But this one, clear, just yin yang. However, completely surrounded by a zodiac of pyramids, that have come back online, apparently. So there's something about the energy of the pyramids and the yin-yang balance. And then the other one that came down on the same day was this one. And this one was witnessed. It was absolutely huge. And it looks like that, does it not? The Om symbol. And the Om, so the Counsel, let's go back. So we have the cube comes down, a little carbon 12 comes down on the same day as balancing polarity, reference that, and have good support of the energy of the pyramids all around the world. Let the vibrational sound of the universe, the Om, come and support this carbon 12. And then what happens to carbon when it's under pressure for a long time? Becomes a diamond! We've been talking about diamonds! And there's, this is very clearly where we mean diamonds, It's so interesting. I was putting this together, and I walk into this restaurant in downtown Petaluma, and this woman who's serving me, she has this figure exactly tattooed on both of her arms.
Oh.
I'm like, oh my God, confirmation. It's just amazing. And did you know that the meaning of the Om mantra, the literal translation is "Hail to the diamond jewel"? I've never heard that before. this is the last one I'm gonna leave us with. So this was 2009, Silbury Hill, just outside of Silbury Hill. This was that same alignment. The huge awakening seems to be it really pointing us to the indigenous knowledge. You know, this feeling has the Mayan feel. This also has the feeling of the Quetzalcoatl because of the snake that was laid in the grass, a stepped snake, much like the shadow that goes down the steps of Chichen Itza at the solstices, at the 21st, December 21st. That was one of the times that it happened. And then there's this bee that's vibrating so fast inside of our consciousness. It even has the cavity at the throat that knows how to do the extra gravitational field, you know, that's sipping into the consciousness. And so the Mayans say that at this 13 Baktun era, that it is a new era of the people made of honey.
No.
Learn traditional tools for aligning with, anchoring, and working with the powerful energies of this new era, and fulfill the Mayan prophecies of becoming the people made of honey.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's a great closure.
Wow.
All right.
Yay.
Got any questions?